and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome again to another edition of Grassroots Motorsports Live, presented by CRC Industries. I'm JG Pasterjack. You are here on a very special night. We got a good friend aboard tonight to tell us a lot about these three amazing pieces of rubber that we tested just this past weekend. Mr. Peter Calhoun from BFGoodrich is going to be here in just a couple of minutes. Here's what I want you to do before that happens, though. Wherever you're watching us, if you're watching us on YouTube, if you're watching us on Facebook, go down and hit the little like button, hit the share button, and especially tonight, I want to ask everybody a favor. If you're watching us on Facebook, I want you to make a comment. I don't care if it's an intelligent comment. I don't care what you type the number 4 in the comments. Do that thing, do like an 8 and then a bunch of equal signs and then a capital D. I don't care what it is, but make a comment, because the more comments we get early in the video, the more Facebook mojo we get, drives us up. So we're gaming the system a little bit. We're asking you to help us game that system and get more people involved in the cool, fun stuff we do every Wednesday night. So yes, thank you very much for everybody making a comment already. Let's see who we got watching now. Our friend Dinesh is here as usual. Thanks for joining us. Danny Ko, recently featured on SCCA's Take 5, is here hanging out with us. Steve and Max and a lot of our regulars on tonight, thanks very much for joining us. Before we get going, let me tell you a little bit about the folks that support this show, talking about our friends at CRC Industries. You can now walk into almost any Napa store, any Advanced Auto Parts store, any O'Reilly store, and you can buy this Brake Clean Pro Series right here. It's Brake Clean, just bigger, which really, what's the only thing in the world better than Brake Clean? Folks, that is more Brake Clean. So Brake Clean Pro Series, out on the shelves now. It was originally released just to industry. It was so popular they decided to release it to little folks just like you and me. So check that out. Also, our friends at Koni Shocks, Koni-NA.com, are proud supporters of this show. They had a rough week at VIR last week. They lost a couple of tents. They lost, their van blew up, but they were there having a good time. We appreciate them supporting our events. We appreciate them supporting our show. They will help you out with up to $70 off a set of shocks. Just go to Koni-NA.com. And our friends at Autobooks Aerobooks out in Burbank, California, the world's greatest bookstore, right there in Burbank and on the internet at Autobooks-Aerobooks.com. You can buy any of their tens of thousands of books, magazines, DVDs, collectibles, about anything with wings, wheels, and engine, pedals, floats, flies, treads, or tracks. They have it. They have books about it. They have great live events. Lynn St. James is going to be there in a couple weeks signing books. Very cool place. We recommend you visit it in person if you can. If you can't make it out to Burbank, Autobooks-Aerobooks.com. All right, let's talk a little bit about what we're doing tonight. So this past weekend, we did a little tire test with our 2004 Corvette C5 Z06. And usually when we do tire tests, we pit different brands of tires against each other. Actually, if you have the current issue of Grassroots Motorsports, you'll see a fantastic tire test from Andy Hollis, where he's comparing BFGoodrich with Bridgestone and Dunlop, I believe. Is that correct? Somebody, yes. I guessed something right that was in the magazine I make every month. But this time we did something a little bit different. We tested a true street tire, a 300 treadwear Michelin Pilot Super Sport, one of the highest performance true street tires you can get your hands on out there, with BFGoodrich Rival S. This is a 315/3018 Rival S. This is a 200 treadwear tire. This is most commonly used in any competition class that requires a street legal tire, a 200 treadwear tire. This is one of the gold standards for competition in that class. It's also a legitimate street tire, but this is sort of the bridge between a true street tire and the BFGoodrich R1S, which is a true race tire. So it was no mystery what won this test. If we're just looking at absolute speed, we know that the race tire was faster than the let's call it the hybrid tire for now, was faster than the true street tire. But what we were really interested in seeing is, well, just how close are these tires and how do they make their speed? So we actually used our petrol data SoloStorm data analyzing system. I'm going to show you some of that data in a little bit. Learned some interesting things, saw some interesting trends on the graphs. But to explain even further how these tires do what they do, we brought Mr. Peter Calhoun himself from BFGoodrich down to Florida here. Pete, welcome to the shop here, man.
Thank you, JG.
Thanks for coming. Folks, we've known Pete. We first met Peter before he was even working for BFG at, it sounds creepy, but stay with me, at a rest area on I-70 in the middle of Kansas on the turnpike. We were headed to Nationals.
Solo Nationals.
In Salina, and you were driving a Ford Probe at the time, I think?
NX 2000 probably.
Okay, and just kind of happened to be there, and you were like, hey, I know you guys. I had just started the magazine. This was in the early 90s, and Tim was there, and like, okay, here's this cool guy who's enthusiastic, and like so many people we've met throughout the years, went on to be a big deal in the world. So it's been cool kind of knowing you this long and following along. We'll get to the tech stuff first, but what was your path from just being an enthusiast to being part of this industry?
Well, it's a little bit scary, as JG was saying a year or so ago. I think at Solo Nationals also, we were reminiscing a little bit how long we'd actually known each other, and it was 20 plus years since we'd both been going to Solo Nationals in Salina, Kansas at the time. But my career path actually, by trade, I'm a marketer. Marketing's my specialty, but automotive has always been sort of my niche. I've been in the automotive industry since before I graduated from college, through a couple different companies and industries, and I've been with BFG now for about 7.5 years.
Wow.
Managing their motorsport programs.
Well, we're honored to have you here tonight, and I'm a journalist. I have to stay unbiased, but screw that. I am a huge fan. I've always been a fan of BFGs. We were just talking earlier. 2 of my 3 Nationals trophies are on BFGs of one kind or another, and it was really fun and informative to take these 3 tires out and just kind of experience what the differences were. So we've talked a little bit about the data. I didn't want to tell you too much because I wanted to get some honest opinions here a little bit. But
Can I have trick questions?
Why is that not too tricky? But tell me what you think happened at our tire test. Give me some sort of general impressions you think we probably came away with, and I'll tell you if you're right.
Why don't we back up one step?
Okay.
And as you alluded a few minutes ago, we have 3 different tires here, and they're really from 3 different categories of product. And we do have 2 BFG products and then 1 Michelin product. And what a lot of people don't realize is that since 1990, BFGoodrich has actually been a part of Group Michelin. And we are the red, white, and blue. We're the American brand within the Michelin group of companies, and we're an enthusiast brand. As you alluded to when we first met back in the early 90s, BFG was there in club racing and autocrossing, and we've been doing that since the early 1970s when we introduced the radial TA on the Pontiac Tirebird and SCCA Trans Am. But more specifically to your question, we do have 3 different categories of product here. We go from the Michelin Pilot Super Sport, which is an ultra high performance summer tire. It was launched globally in 2010, came to America in 2011. The Rival S, Tire Rack would categorize this as an extreme high performance summer tire. We launched this tire in 2013, and then we came out with the Rival S about 1.5 years later to cater a little bit better to the autocross crowd. And then we have the R1S, the G-Force R1S, which is our compound circuit racing, road racing tire. We came out with the S compound in 2012 at the runoffs at Road America, and it was commercially launched in 2013. And this has really been our bread and butter for club racers in both SCCA and NASA and other organizations for a number of years now, and just been a really strong performer.
And spec tire on MX-5 Cup still?
We were the spec tire in the previous generation MX-5 Cup with this tire, with the NC chassis car. With the ND chassis car, which got launched 3 seasons ago, we've actually gone to a true slick on the new ND car.
Okay. Which is a BFGoodrich slick or a Michelin slick?
It is a BFGoodrich slick. They share some lineage, the 2 tires.
Okay, so let's before we start talking about results, and it's going to be no mystery that this tire was faster than this tire, was faster than this tire, but talk about construction a little bit. So, what are there major construction differences between a true street tire and a sort of hybrid tire like this, and a true race tire, or does the DNA sort of flow between them? What are our architectural
There's transfer technologies and flow between the 3 different types of tires. I mean, and some of that is our intellectual property. As a brand, I mean, Michelin was the innovator of the radial tire, and BFGoodrich was actually the first one to launch the radial tire in the U.S. in the 1960s. So some of it's construction, some of it's compound, but when you get into something like the Pilot Super Sport, there's a lot of OE applications for this tire, where the tire will be tuned for that vehicle platform working with the OE.
So one Pilot Super Sport might not be identical to another Pilot Super Sport that comes on an OE.
Exactly.
So in an aftermarket situation, or even in an OE situation, who is this tire aimed at, and what are the design capabilities of this tire? I mean, I was impressed with its prowess on a fast autocross course. Is this tire designed with somebody in mind who might take it to the track once in a while?
You can get occasional track use out of a summer UHP tire like this, but one of the philosophies with how Michelin designs tires, it's total performance, we used to say. It needs to be good in a wide variety of distance. So it needs to be good in the dry and the wet, braking, turning, a very broad window of performance spectrums. As you go into the rival and the R1, that window narrows down where they become more focused on one area. When you look at the R1, this is all about maximum dry grip.
Right.
Obviously, this tire will have a lot more hydro capability when it gets wet. It's just able to evacuate water a lot better for the tread pattern.
The first thing I thought of just driving on this tire was this would be a fantastic tire for something like the One Lap of America, because you can get away with track laps, you can get away with autocross laps, but you also have a lot of negative space there that's going to be great in a wet situation, and it's a fantastic highway tire.
Yeah, the other thing is you get ride comfort.
Yeah.
As we go across the portfolio here, they each ride a little bit differently, and by the time you get to an R1, this is going to be a fairly stiff riding tire compared to what you're going to get with a Pilot Super Sport. So to your point, if you're doing one lap or just need a very strong dry performance tire for everyday use, you're going to have a lot more window, a much larger window on that tire.
Okay, so let's move into the rival now. And actually, just physically looking at them, you can instantly see some differences. You see a much more sort of rounded profile on the side here. This is actually a little bit narrower.
Yeah, this tire is a little bit smaller.
Narrower tire, although it's a little bit taller. It actually has a little bit more rounded sidewall. This has a much more sort of truncated, sharp edge sidewall. This to me looks more like the race tire than the street tire, and performance-wise, just as somebody doing this tire testing, it felt to me more like this one than like this one. Is that a feature, not a bug? Is that the design intent for that tire?
It is a design feature, and obviously within the BFG family, we'll have characteristics that we have across our family of product that are shared. The shoulder shape, what you see, that will affect the progressivity of the tire, the operating window of the tire. The more squared edge, it's going to maximize your contact patch.
Okay.
Give you more dry grip, but then it will narrow up the window before the back end will step out.
So then you move into a true race tire here, which is still a DOT legal tire, correct? Very, very sharp edge, very stiff sidewall. You can actually, feel if you bounce the tire on the ground. It's a much different sidewall. It's a much lighter tire than that one is, or at least just sort of handling it feels a lot lighter. How much construction do these two share, or have we moved into basically a nearly true race tire?
The R1.
How much can you tell us about
the R1 and the Rival actually do not share a lot of architecture. Compounding, they'd probably be most similar, but the internal construction is actually quite. The Rival S will share a lot more construction characteristics with a traditional UHP summer tire, like in our line, a Comp 2 or a Comp 2 all season. As you stated, this is much closer to a race tire construction, because at the end of the day, even though it is a DOT R compound with a 40 tread wear, it is a circuit racing tire.
Yeah. All right, so back to how we sort of started this. What would, if I just came to you and said, okay, I did this test, we autocrossed on all three tires, what would be your initial thoughts as to what I experienced? Being familiar with all these tires, what do you think that I felt from
Well, I think,
tires?
First off, as you hinted at the start of the show, I mean, there's not going to be any surprises as far as the sequence, the order of the results if you just look at the stopwatch. The difference is, I think, that will surprise people are how they got there, and where that will happen, whether it be under braking or transitional response. Today's 200 treadwear tires, which have become so popular in autocross and pro touring and the inexpensive endurance series, they've really evolved a lot in the last 10 years or so, and they're getting closer and closer to an R compound type tire. They really are, but they still have some road civility to it. You can still drive them every day. They still have some capability to evacuate water for them, and obviously the length of them, how long they last, has just improved incrementally.
So let's talk about lifespan a little bit. And we're jumping around here a lot, but it's something I wanted to bring up, and we've gotten some questions about. But let's talk about lifespan for a tire. We've got sort of two wear modes for a tire, which is both physical wear, reduction of tread, and number of heat cycles. And what are we sort of looking at in these tires? Like, will a properly maintained Rival S, will it wear out before it heat cycles out, or how do we know when we're approaching?
There's a lot of variables there. The 200 treadwear category of tires are not as sensitive to heat cycles as the true race tires are, or the R compounds in the DOT tire world. They're not as sensitive to whether it be storage or heat cycles. But, tread depth will have an effect on the lifespan of the tire. But a lot of it comes to the vehicle. The example of your C5 right over our shoulders, this is a very balanced platform. It's a 3,000-pound car with over 400 horsepower, but they have very good suspension that you can get adequate camber out of. They have good camber curves. Yeah. It's just not static camber.
And we can see that just in the wear patterns. I was running the same size tire on the fronts of our Mustang for a couple of years, and I remember within 20 runs or so, these edge blocks would start to wear off from lack of camber. We would start getting sort of this scallopy edge here, and these things just they're wearing very lightly and very evenly. So
you look at a Mustang, which is still a strut front suspension car versus a double A-arm car, and you can't get as much camber, and the camber curves aren't as strong. I mean, Corvettes, and you have enough wheel to support the tire. You're not pinched on the wheel, so you can get adequate contact patch. So between an ND Miata and a C5 Corvette, C6 Corvette, also, tires tend to wear very well on those platforms.
So on a platform like that, on an A-arm car that's going to be easy on tire wear and even on tire wear, are we going to see those heat cycle out first, or are we going to see them wear out first, or how do we know when a tire is starting to heat cycle out, other than just our butts telling us it's not going as
those
fast.
cars that are camber challenged or solid axle rear car, because usually it's said with irregular wear.
Okay.
First up, as you mentioned with the Mustang, you were seeing some shoulder wear, indication that you weren't able to get enough camber out of the car often. But really, again, the 200 treadwear tire, it is not frequent that people are heat cycling them out. I mean, they're pretty much able to wear them down past the warning ribs.
Now, how about break-in procedure? Is there anything we should do before we compete on these tires? Do they have to go through a heat cycle?
So that, I would say, what is your number one priority? In general, a light scrub, get them up to temp, get a light scrub, let them sit for 24 hours or so, will help with the longevity. However, they'll be fast right out of the box. So what you're doing at Solo Nationals, I would say get a light scrub on them, go race them. But if you're buying new tires in March, April, and you want them to last through the summer, I get a light scrub on them and let them sit. That initial break-in period is important for how long the tire will last if you want to maximize the longevity.
Okay.
But from a performance standpoint, they'll be fast out of the box.
So how about on these guys? Similar procedure or?
Similar procedure. Get a light scuff on them. Generally on this car in a circuit racing application, like when we were running them in MX-5 Cup, you put on sticker sets for qualifying, and by lap 4 or 5, they'll be up to temp and you'll be good to go for a fast lap. These tires will be more sensitive to heat cycles, the R compound tires, and also more sensitive for storage in the winter months for those that live in cold climates.
So yeah, let's talk about storage a little bit. My understanding is UV and temperature, two of the big things you want to avoid when storing tires.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've all heard this stories about people storing in black plastic bags in their basement or whatever. So UV is important. Stable temperature though, and in general, you want to make sure your tires in those cold months are stored. Above 40 would be minimum, above 50 even better. You want to avoid freezing, and people think, oh, 32 degrees is freezing, but in the molecular structure of a tire, it can have effects when it's even a little bit warmer. You know, March, April, depending where you live, is a iffy time of year to ship tires by some of our popular freight carriers.
Because they're going in trucks that are not climate controlled.
Well, they're not climate controlled trucks, and how do your common carriers often deliver stuff to your back door?
Yeah.
And
throw it in the snowbank. Yeah.
They'll throw them, and that energy that will go through the tire can lead to some cracking sometimes.
Really?
Yeah. So if you get tires delivered at that time of year, what's best is get them inside, stabilize them, and when talking say not a few hours, leave them in there a couple days, get them stabilized before you even go to mount them.
So you just sit around the fire with a cup of hot chocolate and a stack of rivals,
in the corner of the kitchen. Or,
Okay, what about directionality? Obviously, these are asymmetrical tires. This one's fairly symmetrical, but are these tires in a pinch? Even these asymmetric tires, are these something we can flip to go the other direction?
So let's start out the easy one.
Okay.
The current generation R1 is not an asymmetrical tire.
Okay.
Earlier generations were. If we go back to when we first met each other, JG, back in the early mid 90s, the R1 was definitely an asymmetrical tire, and the sidewalls were quite different. And they did that at the time to work with some of the camber challenge front-wheel drive cars that were so popular at the time in both club racing and autocrossing. But R1 is not an asymmetrical tire. It can run either direction. You know, for consistency, we try to mount it with date codes out when we're doing them at the track, so we can keep our eye on them and know how they're mounted. The Rival is asymmetrical in tread pattern, but not construction.
Okay.
I get the question semi-regularly, but can I flip Rivals? Short answer is yes. Longer answer is why.
Okay.
It'll hurt you on hydro if you do flip them, as far as your ability to evacuate water when it's damp out. Obviously, standing water, it's not its strength, but when there is dampness, it will affect that. But the other thing is, when you're flipping a tire, is what camber's been built into the tire. And we were just talking about camber challenge cars a little while ago. but no matter how much camber you have in your car, after a certain number of runs, certain number of laps, you're going to get some camber built into the tire, and when you flip it, that can lead to some braking issues and some turn-in issues, and you might save a few bucks by not buying a new set of tires, but you're going to affect the overall performance of your vehicle.
So if you're using them for practice, if you're using them for a little bit of just trying to stretch the life of a set of tires, fine, but understand you're not moving into a higher performance setup at that point.
Yeah, and even practice, I would say, is what are you trying to learn? I mean, if you're trying to dial in your car, it's going to be very difficult to learn good information and replicate it. If you're working with a more novice driver and you're teaching driving techniques, you can probably get away with it.
Gotcha.
You know, because one of the important things to consider, and you've been doing a lot of development work in the C5, is tires make a huge difference. So if you're working on your dampers and your bars, your ride heights, you know, having good fresh tires underneath the car is really important.
All right, let's get to a couple questions here. We're hopping around a little bit. We have some good questions I want to get to before they flip off of there. Let's talk about temperature ranges a little bit, because every tire has an ideal temperature range it likes to work in, and they tend to not work great above or below those temperature ranges. Some tires fall off harder when they get overheated. You know, just during our testing, we sort of went out and tried to intentionally overheat them a little bit just to see subjectively what they do. And we, you know, my initial impression was a tire like this falls off with too much heat, more so than a tire like this does. And this one, it seemed like the more heat we got into it, the better it worked.
Yeah.
What sort of temperature ranges are we looking at that these tires are the happiest in?
It's the age-old question,
Yes.
and it's a difficult one because it does depend on platform. You know, again, a car like the C5 over our shoulders, it's a little bit easier to get temperature into the tire because it's a more powerful car, it's a heavier car, and you can do a lot with your right foot and your steering inputs. But it's still a big tire that you need to get heat into. You get into a smaller, lower horsepower car like a Miata, especially in early spring events, you know, sometimes guys struggle to get heat into their cars. Very rough numbers, but there's generally an R1, you want a 160 or above. It's very difficult to achieve in the autocross arena. You know, 5-6 years ago, we were trying to make a little bit more inroad into the R compound market for autocross. You know, there's a very competitive product out in the market, and they do it very well. The strengths of this tire really was on the circuit though. And it was obviously about on the same time the advent of the 200 treadwear classes were really taking off with SCCA and Pro Touring around the country. The Rival S will come in much earlier than an R1. You know, a few different reasons for that. Part of it being compounding and internal construction, but you also notice that, you know, it has a lot more void in the tire. So the actual tread surface, the tread face, you're getting a lot more energy into it, which creates heat. And that was the Pilot Super Sport. Again, it, you know, developed as a UHP all-around performance tire. This tire will perform great for the person that's just getting into track days or autocross, but, you know, they're going to evolve their driving skills and their car setup, and, you know, ultimately they're going to want something a little bit higher performing. But you've already said also, great tire for events like a one lap where you're restricted on your number of tires over an event that's 7-8 days long, and you don't know what the weather conditions are going to be, and then you have
some built-in wet events to begin with,
and you have multiple disciplines between wet and dry skid pads and circuits and sometimes drag racing, and you know.
So give me some ballpark temperature numbers, especially on the, because I've actually been at events before where I've seen people on a grid with the exact same brand and size of tires, and this guy in a car over here is putting blankets on his tire, and this guy in a car over here is
spraying him with water.
So what are we looking for number-wise, roughly, to might make these start working?
Rival S's are probably 125 to 130 or so. Again, it will depend on the tire size and on the platform. but it'll be significantly lower than an R1S.
Okay, and actually this leads into a great question that we got from YouTube about taking tire temps, and there's some different schools of thought out there. Actually, Andy Hollis is if you ask Andy Hollis about taking tire temps, he'll tell you, you almost don't want to pay attention to tire temps to some extent when you're tuning, but when we're actually sort of reading the faces of these tires, what are we looking for? An even split? Are we looking for more heat on the outside, on the inside? What's the idea? And of course, some people won't be able to achieve any of that. What's the ideal situation we're looking for?
Temperature and pressure are everything for performance driving. It doesn't matter what discipline you are. Some disciplines are going to be more important than others. Autocross is very challenging because of the length of runs and the amount of time between runs to get accurate temperatures and to get temperature built up into the tire in many cases. For road racing, now pressure and temperature are key. You should be doing every time you get off the track as soon as you get into it. Ideally, as soon as you get in the pit lane, have a crew member taking your pressures and temperatures, and then keeping logs. Note keeping, and impeccable note keeping is important, and it's not just the pressure and temperature, but also the ambient temperature and the track temperature. So you have a database to go back to the next time you're at that track, or next time you have a handling deficiency that you're trying to cure. So you have some knowledge of, I did this last time and it worked, I did this, it did not. As far as temperature spread, in today's radial tires, generally you're going to want 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit between the inside and the outside. Very difficult on a lot of cars, especially in an autocross situation, and camber challenge cars.
Hotter on the inside or hotter
on the inside?
Okay.
But there's some old school train of thought,
which is going to be hard to do on a strut car for sure. Yeah. And if you're driving
in stock class especially.
Yeah, if you're driving a Ford Fiesta, you'll never get there.
Yeah, obviously the camber challenge cars, Fiestas, Focuses. I mean, there's a number of examples we could reel off the top of our head. Obviously, high temps on the outside shoulder are always a concern because they are camber challenged.
So one more question we got here from the internet, which is something that when I was driving and you're a Formula car guy too. What's your feeling on chemical treatments on some of this stuff? A lot of the Formula car guys are big into making sure that those tires are chemically treated as soon as they come off the course. They get wrapped up. Is that necessary? I mean, of course, it's not legal in most forms of racing, but if you're trying to, is there any advantage to ever treating a set of tires like this to get some more life or get some more usable life?
I'm not a big fan. I mean, it's a short-term solution. Back in my Formula car days, old bias ply tires, occasionally you'd see people use, especially on wets, where you're only using them occasionally forever, and you're storing them. It is a short-term solution sometimes on that when you just need to get by, but they're nothing beats fresh tires.
Yeah, so it's basically like there's no way to reverse aging.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what actually, when we talk about fresh tires, what actually changes molecularly in tires to make them? And you're a marketing guy at heart, but you've been around this world a lot. You
actually answered your own question because it's a molecular structure, and it's the same reason you go out and do a scuff on a brand new set of tires, and it's just not to get the mold release and other chemicals off the surface of the tire from when they come out of production, but to get that heat in there, because every time heat goes into the tire, the molecular structure of the rubber is changing. What a lot of people don't recognize is the complexity of modern tire design. There are very few pieces on a modern day car that are as sophisticated and as a radial tire. And there's over 200 individual components in most tires. It is literally a secret sauce. It's a special blend. And when you look at your rubber compounding and your belt package and your bead package, it's a very sophisticated thing. And yeah, they do change with age, with temperature, with pressure, and
just like us, Pete. It
all comes into play.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break here. Go get a drink of water. Go check your messages. Go share. I will tell folks about some of the folks supporting this show. Actually, we'll give a plug for our trackside companion, of which BFGoodrich, one of the primary sponsors. There's some great tire tuning secrets, a lot of the stuff we're talking about tonight is in here, supplied to us by BFGoodrich. So David will post up in the chat how we can go about getting one of these for free or for next to nothing from Grassroots Motorsports. Let me tell you a little bit about the folks making this show possible. Of course, that is CRC Industries. This show's presented by CRC Industries. Look, every day or every Wednesday before the show, we go around with an armful of CRC stuff. We make sure all of our equipment works. We use their screen cleaner to clean off all of our camera lenses, all of our LED screens that we monitor the show on. We use their lubricants to lubricate the arm in our Steadicam system or the wheels on our tripod. It is stuff that we have used from long before they were supporting us financially and through advertising and supporting events like our $2,000 challenge, just because it's good stuff. We are fans. We are so glad they are fans of ours. We hope you are fans of theirs as well. If you go to any auto parts store, O'Reilly, Advance, Napa, you can find that CRC stuff. When you're grabbing that CRC stuff, you know that you're getting a great product. That goes without saying. But you are also given a little bit back to this world that we live in, this world of amateur and professional motorsports, and that's the important part. You're doing a little bit to support this world that we all enjoy. Also, want to tell you guys about Autobooks, Aerobooks. New book coming out by our friend Hurley. Classic book. He is a super cool cat, and you can get a signed copy of his book from Autobooks, Aerobooks. Check him out at autobooks-aerobooks.com. We'll throw up a link that you can get a signed copy of that book. Very rare opportunity indeed, and if you ever get a chance to meet him and say hi at an event, he is just a really, really cool dude, and a piece of living history, but just a really smart and fun and cool guy to hang out with and to hear a couple of stories from, because whatever happened ever, he probably did it better than anybody else has. So you get a signed copy of his book from Autobooks, Aerobooks. Lynn St. James will be there in person in a couple weeks. If you can't make it out to Burbank, though, check them out at autobooks-aerobooks.com for all of your book needs. And our friends at Koni. So Koni normally provides a little quick tech tip in the middle of every show. Because they were so chaotic this week, they had broken vans and broken tents, and our friend Lee Grimes is out of the office. They were not able to provide a tech tip this week, but we have a special little treat for you. Is a preview of their new commercial series with Coney Man himself. Let's show you that now, actually. So this is 45 seconds of how Coney is giving you guys the business.
He's back, Coney Man.
Do your lap times have your girlfriend looking across the paddock for a new ride? It might be time to change your shocks.
For a limited time, take advantage of the Koni improved mail-in rebate and get up to $70 off.
Don't wait. Shop now.
He's back, Coney Man.
Does your car bounce more than a sugared-up toddler on a trampoline? Time to upgrade your shocks.
For a limited time, take advantage of the Koni improved mail-in rebate and get up to $70 off.
Don't wait. Shop now.
He's back, Coney Man.
Does your car bounce like a check from your deadbeat cousin? Then it's time to upgrade your shocks.
For a limited time, take advantage of the Koni improved mail-in rebate and get up to $70 off.
Don't wait. Shop now.
There you go. That's our buddy Coney Man. I like Coney Man. I dig Coney Man. When you watch all three of those back to back, though, you do kind of get the impression that there is definitely like a really dark streak in Coney Man's life. He was clearly betrayed by both his girlfriend and his cousin, and he hates children. So I'm not saying I'm worried about Coney Man. I'm just saying maybe if you went out and bought a set of shocks from Koni, we could get Coney Man the help that he really seems to need. I'm waiting for just waiting for Coney Man to come out and say, "Hi, I'm Coney Man. Do you know that when you stare into the void stares back into you? And sometimes I sit here and wonder about the existential eldritch horror that my life has become, but the only thing that keeps me going every day is the fact that I can go and adjust the shocks on my car and get through a day without crying. And I think it's up to all of us to make Coney Man's life a better place. And we'll be back next week with some great tech tips from Koni. Yes, Mark Pilson, I support Coney Man too. Coney Man needs to dampen those feelings. Look, he seems like a cool guy, but I'm worried about him because there is definitely a streak of. I'm worried that Coney Man's gonna come on and say, "Hey, everybody, I'm Coney Man. My favorite memory from childhood is when my mom would drop me off at school and kiss me full on the mouth in front of all the other kids, and then drive away in our station wagon with those little airline-sized gin bottles clinking around in the back seat." But you know what else I remember about that station wagon? Had adjustable shocks on it. So check them out at Koni-na.com. Up to $70 off of a set of Koni shocks. Whatever sadness Coney Man is feeling, you can make make his life a better place by doing that. We appreciate them being on board each and every week. All right, let's get. We're going to look at a little bit of the data from our test. So Pete, come on back in, and we will get our Solo Storm data queued up here. Here,
Crank it up there.
Don't show everybody my
Remember your password.
My password here.
I'm not Coney Man, by the way.
Yeah. Okay, so just to kind of cut to the chase a little bit, we'll tell you that our best lap times. We had about a 30-second course, and our best lap time in the Pilot Super Sports 29.9. Best lap time in the Rivals 28.1. Best lap time in the R1s 27.8. So we saw fairly big gap between the Rivals and the Pilots, and a much smaller gap between the Rivals and the R1s. Is that, did I do it right?
Yeah, the pecking order I don't think is a surprise to anybody.
Right.
You know, as we were saying earlier, it takes the R1 a little bit longer to come up to temperature, but you did multiple runs on each set of tires. So that's not a surprise at all. But as I alluded to earlier, I think it would surprise people to look through your data traces and see how you got there.
Yeah, so let's just kind of scroll through these data traces. So just to let everybody know what we're looking at here, we have three graphs: lateral G, speed, and throttle position. And we've got three traces on here that you'll see separate as the run continues. The dark orange trace is the R1, the green trace is the Rival, and the lighter yellow trace is the Pilot. So we can see that approaching our first corner, speeds are fairly even, and then we'll just kind of pause it right in the middle of this first corner. We can see instantly our G readings are vastly different. 1.26 for the R1, almost 1.1 for the Rival, 1.05 for the Pilot. Right. So above 1 G for everybody, but big jump for the R1. Even though our speed was a little bit lower, we can see that our exit speed, if we scroll forward here a little bit, even though our mid-corner speed was a little bit lower, because we had that higher G with the R1, our exit speed was instantly higher. Yeah. So we screwed up a little bit in that corner, probably a driver error there. It was me driving, so I wouldn't be surprised at that.
We can work on that.
That's the only thing here we can fix. So that's kind of interesting. Then we can actually see another difference in this corner here. Let me find peak G's here. So again, we're entering this corner, and you actually see the trace. The line with the R1s was not the greatest in this corner, but our G's considerably higher, and our speeds considerably higher. So is this?
Yeah, I think on what you're experiencing here is around a 30-second course is a good test course.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if you're doing driver training or vehicle development. If you look at some of how Evolution does their programs, 30 seconds, because you want to be able to be consistent across the course they run. If you get too long a course, like they have at Nationals where it's a minute-long course for a lot of classes, it's not the best course for doing vehicle testing and development necessarily.
You start to introduce a lot of driver error.
Yeah, exactly. So a 30-second course is a nice course, and it's what Andy has been doing in your magazine for a number of years when he goes out to Mineral Wells and does the tire test also. But again, your findings are that line consistency will make a difference, but your peak G's were higher, and then your exit speed was higher with the R1 coming down to the mechanical grip it's generating in the corner.
So we'll go forward in time a little bit here, and we can actually see.
You did the straight part excellent.
I did. And actually, that you mentioned that you're being a smartass, but that's okay, because leads me to this point is that if we look at throttle here, we can actually see that we were getting pretty heavy into the throttle with all three of these tires, and they were all taking the longitudinal G's fairly well. They all really put down the power really, really well.
Yeah, all three of these tires will put down power well, but you will notice just through mechanical grip, the stickier tires, the more race-oriented tires, you'll be able to pick up the throttle a little bit earlier, but it'll also affect your braking on the way into the corner, how deep you're able to go under the brakes.
So we'll talk about this more in depth when we get off of the data here, but I'm hearing that because these tires sort of approach some of this stuff differently, there's a little bit different setup approaches we're gonna want to take with some of these tires. How well do these tires transfer from a similar segment? I didn't change any setup at all to try and be consistent.
Well, and that's a good point. When you're testing tires, you want to be consistent. I know
Right.
before the show went on air, you and I had asked you about tire pressures, and you were all in the same window of about 32 pounds on the three sets of tires. And for consistency and getting a true accurate measure, that's really important. When you're testing tires, you're not tuning your vehicle.
Right.
So make sure you have a good baseline that you're comfortable with, but don't be turning knobs and adjusting bars every year, because then you're not testing tires, you're tuning your suspension.
Right. And so here we see another little interesting point. We can see again in steady state stuff, G's are consistently higher with the R1s. Mm-hmm. It's staying in about the same range. Got a little bit deeper into the throttle, well, actually a lot deeper into the throttle on this short straightaway with the R1s than with any other tire, and you can see how it negatively affected the line over here.
Yeah, because you're carrying more speed into the corner.
Yeah, and I basically just hosed up this corner, but really, really interesting. We can actually see the R1 considerably ahead of the other two tires at this point. If we fast forward through time, you can see that I overcooked this corner, gave up a lot of speed to the other tires. The other tires basically caught up to me because of a driver mistake at that point. But if we go forward in time, we can see how fast, just through a single corner, which is this corner coming up, how fast the R1 overtakes those two tires and moves ahead of them again. And you can see it's doing that by the fact that, let's find our peak speed in this corner. Mm-hmm. So we're almost 3.5 miles an hour faster at the exit here.
And if you look at the G's at that particular point, there's a significant difference.
Yeah.
There. I mean, you're at 0.77 on the Pilot Super Sport and 0.98. And ironically, the Rival S was a smidge higher there. It just peaked over 1.0.
Looks like, yeah, our peaks were right about 1.16. Well, okay, there's our peak G with the R1 right there early in the corner, slightly lower speed, but again, it allowed us to get that monster exit, and we can see how much faster the exit was of this corner here. So does that sort of match up with, does any of this surprise you?
None of it surprises me.
Okay, good.
I mean, you asked that question. We do a lot of testing. A tire like the Pilot Super Sport, as we talked about before, there's a lot of OE applications for that tire, and we'll work directly with the manufacturer, so it's tuned to that vehicle's damper and spring package and the ride quality they want and any other characteristics that the OE requires out of a car. The Rival S, we do a lot of our own testing, but then we've been testing out at Lincoln the last few years. Many of you will recognize me from being out there, but for the last 5 years or so, I've brought an engineer along with me. We've tested on the course post-event. We've tested up on the test course during the week with some friends of ours, because we're always looking to improve our product. What a lot of people don't recognize, though, we are part of Group Michelin. We're a global company in a global world nowadays, but our Tech Center is in Greenville, South Carolina. Two of the tires here are designed and engineered in Greenville. The Pilot Super Sport, I need to look and see what application it's coming from originally. And our test track, one of two primary test tracks for the world, is in Lawrence County, South Carolina, about 30 miles from our office.
It's really cool just as a driver and as a competitor, not only to be able to compete on stuff made by my friends, but made by my friends in a town, a half a day's drive from here in the U.S. with U.S. workers, with engineers that are folks that are out there competing.
Yeah, we do. I mean, I know a number of you have been to Black Lake, as it's known at the Michelin Proving Grounds in Lawrence. Central Carolina region does a few events out there a year for autocross. Evolution's done some driver schools out there, and Porsche Club uses it for our autocross pad. We've got one of our test drivers at Michelin now that's been running National Solo Series and Pro Solo for the last couple of years in a car that looks suspiciously like yours. But we're an engaged company with engaged employees.
Absolutely. And let me shout out quick for Solo Storm. That is the data package we're using for the C5 this year. Fantastic product. Check them out at petroldata.com. Really easy to use, Android-based data system. We're going to be doing a show about it at some point because we're big fans. But
do we get to go to Vancouver for that show?
I would love to. You ever been to Vancouver?
No.
Oh, it's a fantastic. I love Vancouver. Vancouver Island is as close as you'll ever get to New Zealand without going halfway across the world.
Only halfway across the country.
Yeah,
actually, all the way.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about setup a little bit. We alluded to it earlier that if we wanted to maximize setup, how different is our setup going to look maximized for this tire versus this tire versus this tire? What are we going to be able to do?
There's a lot of driver preference, obviously, in how they want their vehicle to behave and handle. But when we look at these tires, the vertical stiffness of the tire, again, they're sort of in order. The R1S is going to be a lot stiffer tire on the car, and then we'll sort of progressively go down. So you might need to make some slight damper adjustments and sway bar adjustments if you have that capability in the class you're competing in. But at the end of the day, if you have a well-balanced car that is set up with quality dampers and bars, the biggest variable is going to be your alignment and your air pressure.
And I know the Andy Hollis method for finding that. What is the BFG approved method for
well, what's the Andy
that?
method?
Well, Andy uses skid pad for that, actually.
Yeah, actually, Andy I know does a lot of skid pad work, and he just did one obviously in the issue that just arrived in mailboxes 2 weeks ago with the current tire test. We'll use skid pad a little bit. We have dry and wet skid pads available to us at our test facility. We can test in the wet 365 days a year if we wanted to. But we will use a combination of circuit testing, autocross testing, and skid pad in development of our performance tires, and we'll use a variety of platforms also.
Okay.
So, we obviously have some Corvettes in our arsenal since we're the OE tire for Corvettes nowadays.
You just retired one of your very well-known platforms recently.
Not yet.
The M3?
Not yet.
So they have one of the, it's an M3 lightweight, right? E36 M3 lightweight, a rare car that has been in your test fleet since it rolled off the showroom floor, basically.
Yeah, so another magazine actually did a feature article on our M3 lightweight about 4 or 5 months or so ago. It is a favorite of our test drivers and our engineers, actually, for a couple different reasons. One, it's a very well-balanced car out of the factory. And two, the E36 series BMWs allow a lot of different tire to fit on the car. So literally you could test anything from as small as a 215 up into 285 range of tires. So it gave a lot of flexibility and be able to test tires on that platform. And then obviously it's just German reliability. I think you just run like a tank. So you're right though, that car has been in our test fleet for essentially 20 years right now. It's in 1996 I believe was the year lightweights were out, and I think we got ours in 97.
Wow. So is it due to be retired this year, or what's the?
It is still in the fleet. I don't know the current plans for it, because the other thing I didn't mention, one of the reasons the test drivers like it is because it's got good power but not excessive power. So like I was mentioning a few minutes ago about testing on a course that's very repeatable and consistent, the test drivers want the same thing in a car, because if you're out there testing in a car that has 800 horsepower, to be consistent and be able to replicate
a lot of variables
becomes a lot more difficult. So you're out there in an M3 lightweight and it's a 245 horsepower car, you know, they like it for that flexibility. We have another newer 3 Series actually that we built up a few years ago to try to replicate that performance, but in an E92 platform.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the future a little bit, because obviously this is one of the gold standards in 200 treadwear competition right now, but there's a few gaps. There's no 19-inch sizes for the, or there's no big 19-inch sizes for these. If you want to go wide, you got to go with an 18. So some of the Camaro guys are not really able to take advantage of some of these. Are there plans to expand that? What's the future look like for as OEM wheels continue to grow every year?
The tire industry is very interesting right now, and a lot of the trends are obviously driven by the OEs. But as you say, modern muscle is it's a gap in our product portfolio right now for Rival S. You're hoping to have some of 19-inch fitments available early this season. They've been delayed a little bit, but we do hope to get them kicked off here later in 2018. Specifically, it will be a 275/3019 and a 305/3019 to cover most, again, modern muscle. Mustangs, Camaros, 370Zs, M3s that are running in like F Street, B Street for autocross, and then some of the Pro Touring guys that aren't running the big, crazy wide wheel packages.
So what's the life cycle of a compound like this? You know, when a new compound's introduced, how long will that be the standard before we start seeing, you know, an updated version
for
come
commercially?
to the market? Yeah, or for this market, because this I would imagine there's a lot of volatility in this market. You've got people that are constantly chasing the fastest thing out there. You know, as soon as somebody is rumored to have something a little bit better, I think autocrossers aren't the most loyal group in the world always.
I think so. First, I think that's one of the misnomers in grassroots motorsport is tires all about compound.
Right.
As I stated earlier, you know, there's over 200 individual components in a modern day radial tire, of which a lot of those chemicals are going into the compound blending. Obviously, we have a full-time team of chemists, both in the U.S. and in France, that are constantly developing new compounds. You know, you look at a tire like the Pilot Supersport. This is actually a bi-compound tire.
Okay.
There's different compounds on the inner blocks and the outer blocks.
Oh wow.
I mean, because this is a pretty sophisticated tire from that standpoint. You know, when you look at something like Rival, when we came out with Rival S 1.5 2 seasons ago, in the smaller sizes, it was 255 millimeter section width and smaller, both from 15 through 18 inch seat diameters, rim diameters. There was a lot of misconception when that product was first launched. This is a new compound. And that's actually not true. It is the same compound. There is a lot of tuning that our engineers can do to a tire that has nothing to do with.
So it's the same physical rubber on a slightly different skeleton, essentially.
Yeah, it's, we constantly, and it's a lot of things that we'll do with OE applications on things. But one of the complaints, comments, probably more accurately, when we came out with Rival S, it was still a strong competitor in the field at the time, which was actually a little bit broader as far as the number of competitors at the time. Was it was a little bit vague on turn-in, took a little bit quicker time to warm up. So like I said, we go out and test in Lincoln, we'll test on the concrete out there, get some feedback from drivers on different platforms. So we make sure we'd have both a front-wheel drive platform and a rear-wheel drive platform, a low horsepower car and a higher horsepower car. And we were able to improve that with the 1.5, but it was just sort of how everything's assembled.
So what's the life cycle of something like that, from the time you sort of identify a need for a change to actually putting those changes into production? What's that life cycle like?
So part of it will be depend on how many trophies we're bringing home on Monday morning.
Okay.
How competitive is the tire among its competitive set? But the development cycle for tires is actually fairly long. I mentioned the sophistication of tires and how it relates to the vehicle as a whole, tires take a long time to develop. It's the testing, the tuning, the development, and trying different things. What works, what doesn't work, and then put it into production and all the tooling.
And I would imagine at every single one of those steps, there's also a legal aspect to get DOT certification or TUV certification or whatever they have in Europe that has to be monitored during that development process, and those can't be easy hurdles to clear.
Yeah, there's a lot of regulatory things that go into tires also. All these markings on the sidewalls of your tires, they're not there for cosmetics.
Yeah.
They're there for other reasons, but we do have industry standards to meet, government standards to meet. Government standards vary by country. The 2 tires we're looking at here, the BFGoodrich models, they're actually only available in North America. I only sell these tires in Canada and the US. A tire like the R1, this tire couldn't even be made road legal in Europe, for example. It would have to go in as a competition tire only and be marked accordingly.
All right, so we gotta wrap things up here a little bit. If anybody has any last minute questions, throw them in the chat and we'll get to them. But as we sort of wrap things up here, what you've been in the tire game forever. What is bust a myth for me here? What is everybody out there doing wrong with their tires, or what is a popular misconception that you are constantly correcting people on when it comes to tire performance or tire use?
I think the biggest thing that we see in grassroots racing is guys that get out of their car immediately after they get out of the car and start bleeding their tires down. They get out their gauge, they haven't even taken their helmet off, they start bleeding their air pressure down. Autocross situation, get out of the car, get your helmet off, get relaxed, do it closer to your time of your run, because the tire's going to naturally cool down and you haven't allowed it to stabilize, so you're going to have a spike in your temperature and pressure, and then you're constantly bleeding it down between runs, and then by the end of the day your tire's actually you have less air in it than when you started. But pressure is a really misunderstood thing. You need to monitor it closely, and then there's also the correlation between pressure and temperature. Guys that run in true race classes on slicks, like in my old days when I was in a Formula Ford, and you have a very low pressure in a bias ply slick, that correlation between pressure and temp becomes even more important, because a half a pound difference makes a difference in a car when it's 1,100 pounds and you're running 13 pounds of pressure.
Yeah, or in the case of like my F-Mod car, your tire is essentially your spring as well. Yeah. So you're changing your spring rates.
But I cannot stress enough that pressure.
So actually, Brian asked a question about nitrogen versus air. Is there an advantage, obviously, to running something like nitrogen that's more temperature stable?
Depends on the application. Autocross, it's not going to matter a lot. Good dry air can be equally as good as nitrogen. I mean, air is mostly nitrogen. It will be more stable. It will have less moisture. Track day applications, endurance racing applications, it's going to be more important. For autocross, just make sure you have good dry air on your airlines.
So chances are that's not your biggest problem. It's running air and nitrogen. You're splitting some hairs. All right. And Jim says Rival S's are way better than NT05. So there goes the Nitto contract. Thank you, Jim. Let's see.
He didn't travel to Florida, the Nitto
guy. Rich wants to know widths for 18-inch diameters. Anything coming Rival S? 295 to 305, 18 or even 19. We just talked about the
305, 19 will be coming.
19s. Any more wide 18s?
Not at this moment.
Okay.
Obviously, we've sort of become the de facto standard for the Pro Touring Committee, because one of the interesting factoids about the 200 treadwear tire, we are the only one designed, engineered, and made in America. This category of tire definitely has Asian roots to it, and a lot of it came out of time attack and drifting.
Yeah.
Sorry to disappoint my autocross friends, but these tires didn't start in autocross for the rest of the world. This one did. That is the difference. We designed this with autocross as its primary intent.
All right, so we'll wrap it up with this, and this is something that we're asked about constantly. Talk a little bit about pinch versus stretch. Wide tire on a narrow wheel versus a narrow tire on a wide wheel. What are some of the dynamics involved in those processes, and is there Is there a rule of thumb where you should?
So there is rules of thumbs that are actually established by the industry.
Okay.
So there's two governing bodies primarily for tire standards, and it's the TRA, Tire and Rim Association for North America, and then ETRTO, which is the European Rim and Tire Association out of Europe. Those organizations actually determine the sizing of the tires. A lot of people think that one of the misconceptions in the grassroots community is that a tire company just makes a tire whatever the size they want, they put whatever tread wear rating they want a tire. That's absolutely false, at least for any reputable company. They're established by those two organizations, and within those size guidelines are the approved rim widths. So it doesn't matter if you look in one of our data books for one of our two brands or one of our competitors, you look up a given size and they'll tell you the range of rim widths. Generally, it's about 1.5 inches or so. Some are as small as an inch, some are as big as 2 inches or more. Depends often on the section width of the tire, the aspect ratio of the tire. In general though, to be in the middle of that is not bad, or the outer extremes. To be able to get your sidewall as vertical as possible, add some vertical rigidity to it, will help with your transitional handling and that stability under braking. What happens, and we see this most commonly in autocross applications, is guys want to maximize their contact patch, and they'll put the widest tire they can on a narrow rim, and they end up pinching it down, and it almost looks like a cantilever bias ply from a Formula Ford in some cases. In many applications that will work for a short autocross run, but on the track,
because you've got so much sidewall flex going on.
Sidewall flex, and you're just going to build heat up into the tire.
And you're going to build it up in places where it's not really the ideal place to have heat, and you're going to build it up probably in these transition areas.
Well, depending on what pressure they're run, but you're also going to bring in other elements of it. You're going to lose some steering response, and you're going to lose some stability under braking. So, again, platform and application varies a lot.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, JG,
fantastic.
and everybody from the family.
Yeah, well, great seeing you here. It was really, really fun and enlightening. Driving these three back to back, and seeing some of the data as it was coming in real time, and having the data sort of justify what I was feeling. And overall, there was nothing here that I wasn't extremely impressed with in one way or another. Even I think the biggest, if there was a surprise, it was just how capable this thing is for a tire. You could have easily driven up there on and gotten decent mileage and not had a ton of noise. To be able to go out there fresh out of the box and be a competent high feedback autocross tire.
I can tell you, this is a tire I drive on every day.
Is it really?
Spyder Super Sport. I have an M3. That's my daily driver. That's what I have on for everyday driving. It's a great performance tire. It's quiet. It brakes well. It's good in the wet. And obviously, we've got the next generation Pilot Sport 4S that was launched last year.
Yep.
In many applications, we just won one lap of America with it a week and a half ago.
Yes, you did on a Corvette.
On a Corvette.
Awesome. Thank you, Pete.
You are welcome. Thanks, JG. And
is that it? Oh, here. One last plug for the book. All kinds of great tire tips in here from BFGoodrich. We'll show you how to get some of these. We've got the second printing of these coming out soon. This is the Grassroots Motorsports Trackside Companion, presented by BFG, SCCA, and Koni. So thanks for bringing that. I know those are precious, so I'm gonna give you that one.
My
back
personal stash.
Yeah,
yes.
We're running out of those ourselves, folks. Thank you very much for watching. Before we get out of here, last shout out to our friends at CRC Industries. Check them out at crcindustries.com. All of your automotive chemical needs for cleaning, lubricating, adhering, or anything in between. Any auto parts store, Napa, Advance, O'Reilly, Pep Boys, all carry that CRC. Even Walmart and Lowe's, we've seen the CRC stuff at. If you're grabbing that CRC stuff off the shelf, you're getting a great product. That goes without saying, but you're also getting a product from a company that gives back to this world that we live in, this world of amateur and professional motorsports. So that is your way of supporting this stuff that we love to do. Also, check out our friends at Koni. They provide the Koni Tech Tip of the Week, Koni-na.com. Show a little love to Coney Man, because I think he needs it, folks. You can get $30 to $70 off a set of Koni shocks right now. Go onto their website, any chance to get knock a couple bucks off of a fantastic product like that. We definitely recommend doing it. So Koni-na.com. And check out our friends at Autobooks Aerobooks, autobooks-aerobooks.com. World's greatest bookstore there in Burbank, California. Meet Lynn St. James in just a few weeks. Check out Hurley Haywood's new book, get a signed copy, or get any one of their tens of thousands of books, magazines, videos they have sitting there. You can go there in person, which we highly recommend you do, because they've got lots of great live events going on. Or check them out on the web at autobooks-aerobooks.com. Next week, I don't know exactly what's going to happen next week, because tomorrow I'm having surgery. I have what's called a mandibular cyst. And the reason I'm telling you about it now is because now that I've talked about it, it's a work thing, so I'm going to try and write off my copay for it. But I'm having surgery tomorrow. I'm having a wisdom tooth removed, so I don't know if I will be able to talk next week. So there might be a best of next week. It might just be me sort of holding up signs and writing things and communicating with you that way. So something's going to happen next week. I don't know exactly what. We'll figure it out hopefully by Monday or Tuesday. I will know what's going on. Monday is Memorial Day. I hope you have a wonderful Memorial Day and get to the chance to hang out, chill with your family, and read some Grassroots Motorsports. Let me give one last sweep through here. Gregory says he learned some stuff. I am glad that happened. Somebody wanted to know if I was going to Spring Nats. No, I'm not, because I'm having mouth surgery tomorrow, so can't make it to Spring Nats. And Anthony says I can mumble. I do that anyway, so nobody would even know. Folks, that is it. That is the show this week. Thank you very much for joining us. What a lovely way to spend a Wednesday night. I'm JG Pasterjack. Thank you very much to Pete Calhoun from BFGoodrich, who is our guest tonight. Thanks, as always, to Chris Tropia behind the camera. Thanks to David Wallens over there monitoring our social media. And Ed was monitoring social media as well tonight, Ed Higginbotham. And thanks most especially to all of you who watch this ridiculous mess that we put ourselves through every Wednesday night. It is an honor to bring this to you. It is so much fun to bring you guys behind the scenes look at what we do at Grassroots Motorsports and share some of this time with you. So I appreciate you watching every week. We'll see you again next week, somehow, some way, Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, here at Grassroots Motorsports Live, presented by CRC Industries. Good night, everybody.